So hello everyone. Today we will do newspaper of June 2nd. All right, 2023, and let's do this. So we have Prime Minister Prachand from of Nepal came to India, and certain pacts have been signed. The Transit Treaty of Rail Ring, Inland Waterways, series of pacts. All right, and here we can see that Mr. Prachand said to resolve the boundary matters through establishment of bilateral diplomatic mechanism. All right, and it will widen the development in the region. While the bilateral cooperation, it will also enhance the bilateral cooperation, and India and Nepal should cooperate to mitigate those challenges. And especially things have taken so far in the power sector. Two countries decided that India will import 10,000 megawatt of power from Nepal in next 10 years under a new long-term power trade agreement. All right, and here also the India-Nepal relationship as hit or highway, uh, inways and transit way. That is hit or highways, I highways and transitway, transway, highways, transways, highways and transways, and signed. They have signed seven agreements to boost cooperation in several areas, including trade and energy. All right, and they have checked posts for Rapida in Barech district of Uttar Pradesh and Nepal Gunj in Nepal, and cargo train from Batnal in Bihar to Nepal Custom Yard. It will strengthen the culture and religious sites by projects related to Ramayana circuit, that is should be expedited, and the two countries sign a treaty of transit, construct new railway route with Nepal as well as the inland waterways. That is, it is hit, that is highway, in inways and transways. All right. Now let's move forward. Yeah, see, the Italian and India's relationship can be covered through magazine. I'm, that's why I wrote it. And this China Yellow Shield project development, this can also be covered in magazine. So we don't have to take care of it. All right. And center to recruit 17 officers from private sectors and to improve their health power, to improve our health power, financial service, agriculture, and rural development and statistics. These are the areas from where center will be choosing. Now, stay in course. Center has maintained the momentum in capital spending, contained deficit, fiscal consolidation must continue. All right. It maintained its commitment to enhance the capital expenditure with accurate spending slightly exceeding is what the earlier project. Union government was able to contain its fiscal deficit, and the center gross tax collection grew at healthy 12.7 percentage in 2023. However, while this is in line with the budget expectation, it is lower than the normal GDP growth. And the disaggregated data show that the growth in direct tax collection far outstripped revenue from the indirect taxes, and direct taxes grew at almost 18%, more than the increase in nominal GDP, with both corporate and personal income tax collection registered in healthy growth. And indirect taxes growth was 7.2 percentage, in part due to local excise collection, and while the government non tax collection exceeded expectation, as the income from dividends surpassed target, its disinvestment proceeding, including proceeds from molestation of highways, were again short of expectations. Centre's capital expenditure grew by 24% and driven by outlay on road and railways, and the fertilizer subsidies are higher than the budgeted, and the budget are assumable as nominal GDP growth of 10.5 percentage, and the gross tax collection at a growth of similar pace. RBI expected that the growth economy to grow at 6.5%. The financial minister has said that the aim is to bring down the fiscal deficit to below 4.5% of GDP by 2025 to 26, and they will stick to path to fiscal consolidation. All right, and let's study about this. Big picture is bright. GDP data surprising only the pessimist. Growth this year is likely to overshoot RBI's estimation. Now, most of the estimation of the economic growth in 2022-23 was below 7%. For 2023-2024, are still closer to 5.5%, and global uncertainty does many any make any estimate uncertain. Now, the contrary to market perception, GDP growth came in higher at 7.2% in 2023-24 and grew by 7.7% in 2023-24. 22-23. All right, and higher of this release was the agriculture has performed significant better resilience in growth of 4% from entire year, and services have recovered well growth at 9.5 percentage, and thus propelling over a GDP growth. All right, so uh, here we have the basic chemical and roadways and real estate accounted for 53% of new investment announcement. That means they are having 53% of the area. Now, the price at INA market of certain commodities are greater than the minimum support price, indicating better price and distribution. All right, and recovery in income prospect for the farmers. Now, RBI estimation of 6.5%. As per our estimate, the economy is likely to grow at 6.7%. And the number of GST registration is about 1.4 crore, whereas the current MSMEs unit registered under the Udyam have reached 1.87 crore. And the gap between the two indices the extent of further formalization as these enterprises are brought into the formal system, and this could lead to credit boom for these smaller firms. All right, and we have focus and common interest. All right, the Ukraine war, the COVID 19 pandemic, the interest rate hike in the United States, all countries are facing with the test of how to stabilize the growth. The robust economic performance of China and India have attract more attention. India has become the fifth largest economy in the world, and the World Investment Report of 2022 said that in 2021, India ranked seventh among the top 20 recipients of the foreign direct investment. India digital economy is growing rapidly with the more than 82% startups and 107 unicorn companies. And 22-23 India Economic Service reported predicted that India will become one of the fastest growing economy in the world in the fiscal year of 22-24, and GDP growth of 4.5% year of market viability recovery in the SME Development Index reached 89.3 policy between the March 20 January January and March. All right, and the economy and prices remain stable, and the consumer price index rose by 1.3 percentage. That means the employment and prices remain stable while the consumer price index rose by 1.3 percentage. Now, the China and India have made important contribution to world poverty alleviation, and Chinese government have has lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty, while 410 million people in India have been lifted out of poverty. And according to the forecast of International Monetary Fund, the contribution of China and India to world economic growth this year will be over around 50 point 50.3 percentage, right? And 23 marks the high point in India's diplomacy with its presidencies at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and G20. All right, and here we are. Government gave 46 lakh loan to street vendors, about 40% repaid. All right, means government has given around 46 lakh loan to street vendors, and around 40% have been repaid. Now 46.54 lakh small working capital loans have been distributed to street vendors under the Prime Minister Street Vendor Atmanidhi PM Savanidhi. All right, this plan and PM Savanidhi portal of Union Housing and Urban Affairs. The about 40% of those loans have been repaid. Under the scheme, the street vendors are eligible for the first term loan up to 10,000, and if they repay the first loan they are eligible to get the second loan of 20,000 rupee, and if they again paid then again they get the loan of 50,000 rupees. All right, and the scheme was launched at the offset the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdown in the 2020. Yeah. Now around six more cheetahs to be released in Kuno National Park soon. All right, it is the idea given by the Global Tiger Forum. All right, now we have this BRICS that could be bigger. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are the total countries. And she is a leftist liberal. She's against the government, and the BRICS meeting happened at the Cape Town, South Africa. And the BRICS consist of grouping comprising of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, which is seen as the closest that global South. And it was the 15th BRICS summit, and 19 countries are said to be the queer to be joining BRICS: Argentina, Nicaragua, Mexico, Uruguay, Venezuela from Latin America, and Africa, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey, Syria, Iran from West Asia, and Kazakhstan from Central Asia, Bangladesh and Afghanistan from South Asia, and Indonesia and Thailand from Southeast Asia. All right. If we talk about China in BRICS, so it has strengthened the China-Russia partnership also, and China's Foreign Office said that the membership expansion has become the part of the core agenda of BRICS. All right, and what was the theme of BRICS 2023? BRICS and Africa partnership for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. Multilateralism. India in BRICS. India was never anti-West BRICS. All right, a preemptive contradiction because uh, in this chapter they have shown it like that India is against the West, but it is not like that. All right, India should not be seen as gagging up in the anti-West coalition. A lot of countries are misunderstanding this, and India is also part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization despite the problem it has related with Russia and China. While the China does want BRICS to be anti-West. All right, China wants BRICS to be anti-West. uh, Emerging group, the Indian view is that it is the non-West group, and it should stay like that. All right, and the common currency. The idea for common currency was proposed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Beijing BRICS summit, and the Moscow wants to payment in dollar because it does not uh, import enough from India to use rupee payment. Negotiations are stuck. That means the Moscow wants dollar because it does not import enough from India. All right, it doesn't import enough from India, hence it doesn't want the rupee payment system. Now we have this the GDP growth estimation to cross 7%. What is in store for the market? All right, 6.1 growth in in gross domestic product (GDP) for the fourth quarter ended March 2023, and the growth estimation is fully this year is around 7.2 percentage, and it is the global India manufacturing purchasing managers index PMI rose to 31 months high to 58.7 May from 57.2 in April, leading to macro indicators like GST collection, PFI inflow, PMI data, credit growth, and strong Q4 GDP number, suggesting a uh, resilient economy. All right, and we have the US debt ceiling going on. The debt ceiling bill is baptism vote, and to avert the default on the country's 3.4 trillion debt. All right. Now, our FPI is back. The foreign portfolio investment FPI flows into India reached to 9-month high of rupees 48,330 crores, while the FPI lifted the indices. And by more than 2% in May, India is among the best performing market, while others, both developing and emerging, are struggling. And automobile, capital growth, healthcare, oil and gas, telecom and financial services, particularly banking, and FPI flowing are likely to continue support the market. There is no scope for the sharp rally since the valuation are favorable at record points. The FPI hot way can exit faster than it entered. The FPI have pulled out more than 2 lakhs crore between January to June 2023, upsetting the calculation of Indian investor. Now the market expert are willing to bet big on India's upcoming manufacturing story. Many of feel that the market through is not cheap or reasonable valued and could hit the new highs. So this is what they said. And if I talk about the world news, the landscape pressed for the inclusion in NATO and the summer close at the border. Now here Ukraine and the Moldovan presidents meet, that is the Zelensky as well as the Sandu. And the summit of EU 22 members have been, the European table have been held in Kast Deep, Moldova, just for 20 kilometers of the European. All right, the European the meeting held of the EU meeting held, and the Zelensky is putting pressure to let it join, while the Turkey rejected the Sweden membership, all right, to join the NATO, while the NATO is pressuring Turkey to change its plan. All right, the Park annual May inflation hits 38%, Asia's highest. That means Park inflation rate is the highest, and it rose to 37.97 percentage, and becoming the highest rate in the South Africa. That means the South Asia inflation is hit it. The latest 38% rise dropped that of Sri Lanka, which posted an inflation of 25.2 percentage. All right, and the vegetation pulses and chicken prices posted the biggest region. All right, and the Lanka lower interest rate, it came to 27%. No, and the first time since the country went to bankrupt, and it was help of because of the International Monetary Fund, and resulted in slowing down. All right, central bank said that the lending and deposit interest rates were reduced by 250 basic points to 14 to 13%, and the heading inflation stood at 35.3% in April, and for the reduction of 25.2% in May, and expected to reach the single digit territory by the third quarter. Now the Sri Lanka declared the bankruptcy in April 2022 and said to be suspended its repayment, and suspending repayment for the foreign debt. And the agreement with the IMF, aided by the importer control and increasing income from the tourism and worker remains at central bank to strengthen its reserve. Now the US partners Singapore and China agreed on top level defense hotline. The It happened between the Beijing and the close American partner in Asia, that is the Singapore, and both of the countries' defense minister they signed a memorandum of understanding. All right, and they discuss about the global regional security issue. All right, and US declared sanction after Sudan ceasefire violation. All right, imposing economic sanction and visa restriction against the actors, and the Saudi Arabia and the United States have to be monitored as a ceasefire deal, but between the Sudan army and the paramilitary forces, and but it couldn't, as it the uh, problem arose in between them. All right. Now, the Taiwan and US to sign the first agreement under the new trade framework, and it will be the first trade. All right. It will be called US Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade. All right, and two sides reach agreement on the first part of the first part of their trade initiative, covering the custom and the border procedure, regulatory practices, and small business. And the trade agreement include the agriculture, digital trade, labor, and environmental standards states to own. All right. So if we move forward, at the economy, we have the GST collection sees 1.11.5 rise in May. So we already know that the gross good and services tax collection in May rose to 11.5 percentage, that is to 1.57 lakh crores. All right, and GST collection were at the 3 month low in May, and lower than rupees 1000 1,87,035 crore collection. And anti-evasion measures have been taken, such as the drive against the fake registration being taken by the indirect tax authorities. All right, that means the drive against the fake registration has been taken by the indirect tax authorities, and the GST clears up the drive for the fake registration and may impact the domestic collection positively. All right, and the violence effect of Manipur recorded a 17% decline in the revenue collection. Also, all right, revenue collection is also economy is also being affected by 17% by the revenue tax collection, and the overall growth of 12% in GST collection compared to the same month last year is also well reflected in the state-wise collection, with some major states to showing a growth of 11 to 13%. Now uh, we have this: as liquidity improves, the and inflation falls, deposit rates to stay steady. All right, and now the India and Russia oil purchase at the fresh high in May. Now the India crude oil imports from Russia surged to fresh all-time high. World's third largest oil consumer imported close to 2 million barrel per day. All right. The Moscow newly found position at the New Delhi's largest source of oil, and India total refinery capabilities stand at around 5 million per day, 5 million barrel per day, and the country depended on the import to meet over 85% of its own oil requirement. That is India. India's requirement capacity is around 5 million barrel per day, and it is dependent upon 85% of oil import of India. All right, and Russia crude accounted at almost 42% of India's total oil import. That means this time around 42% of oil import happened in India, and which included the traditional heavyweight like Iraq and Saudi Arabia. And imports volumes from Iraq stood at 8,39,000 barrel per day, accounting for around 18% of Indian oil import. That means the Iraq is giving around 18% of oil imports, and the import of Saudi Arabia is around 12%, and the imports from UAE is around 4%. So the highest is Russia, being the 42%. Then we have Iraq around 12%. Sorry, we have Iraq and Saudi Arabia stood around 18%. All right, and we have Saudi Arabia at 12%, and we have UAE at 4%. However, the India is now appealed to be testing the limits of Russia, right? And of oil importing, India import of the Russian oil could peak due to combination of factors, including increased competition from China refiners for Russian flagship Ural crude. All right, Russian flagship Ural crude is sweeter. It is much expensive, and Indians refiners purchase the commitment for the sour grade under terms of contract with the traditional supplier in the West Asia. So we get the sour crude from the West Asia, and we get the sweeter crude from the Urals, that is from Russia. And Urals accounted for around 71.4% of India's Russian oil import, and India's import of Ural, a medium sour grade of crude, and appearance to have plateau, and indicating a limit on India's capacity to import more than its grade. And West Asia nation have traditionally been India's major supplier of sour crude, and considerable portion has these supplies are under the annual terms contract, and which have minimum purchase commitment. Now the Urals can replace other sour crudes, and it is limited by the Indian refiners. And China's refiners have been stepped up the purchase of Ural, leading to the more competition between New Delhi and Beijing. And the share of sweeter or lower sulfur crude. That means the sweeter crude has low sulfur in it, and it has increased in the India Russia's oil import. All right, with complexity related to payment, the West sanction sweet crude are generally more expensive than the sour crude. All right, means the sweet crude is expensive than the sour crude. Now, as we know that why Russia is not ready to accept the Indian payment system, because it doesn't import anything from India. All right. Now, the key reforms have transformed India the last decade, said the Morgan Stanley report. The supply side policy reform, formalization of economy, social transfer, insolvency, bankruptcy code, government support for the corporate profit, and among the 10 key reforms which have transformed India. Now, a new cycle in manufacturing and capex is expected, with the share of both in GDP estimation to rise by the approximately 5 percentage point by 2031. India's export market share is estimated to rise to 4.5% by 2031, 2 into from 2021 level, with broad-based gain across the good and services exports. India's per capita income increased to a US dollar 2,200, and currently it is 5,200. All right, for financial of not currently, it will rose to 5,200 in the financial of 2032. All right, and we have the economy is likely to grow in 6.5 to 6.7 range in financial year 2024. So it is an estimation, we have already read it. It will be of this range only. All right, it will supported by the domestic drivers and robust capex momentum of the government and country's economy to US dollar of 3.3 trillion, and GDP growth is expected to leapfrog for 7.8 percentage in the next decade from 6.6 percentage previously recorded. All right, so here we are, and let's move forward. Let's see what else is there. I believe now we have the sports section, which we don't have to study for the UPSC or any other exams perspective. So thank you everyone for listening, and I will continue reading the newspapers as always. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you everyone.